"Stop right there. You're trespassing." The words exploded in my face like a firecracker, halting me mid-step as I walked into the gleaming lobby of my own office building. I'm Jake, a 32-year-old entrepreneur who bet everything's savings, dreams, and a few sleepless nights on owning this modern commercial complex. But there, standing in my lobby like she owned the place, was Karen, the HOA president from the residential neighborhood next door. She clutched a clipboard like a weapon, her face twisted in smug triumph, flanked by two beefy security guards who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Behind her, a hastily taped sign declared, "HOA property, all rules apply." My jaw hit the floor. Then I saw the flashing red and blue lights outside. Karen had called 911, claiming I was the intruder on her turf. My heart pounded. This wasn't a misunderstanding, this was war, and the whole complex was legally mine. How did I end up in a showdown with cops at my own doorstep? Buckle up, because this story's wilder than you think. Let's rewind to 3 months ago. When I first laid eyes on this property, it was love at first sight. A 3-story glass and steel masterpiece in a thriving suburban hub. Perfect for my tech startup. The open plan offices, high ceilings, and a ground floor cafe with the best cold brew in town screamed, "This is where dreams are built." I'd spent years scraping by, coding in coffee shops, pitching to investors who didn't get it. This complex was my big break a chance to create a hub for innovation, lease spaces to other small businesses, and finally make my mark. The price was a steal, thanks to a motivated seller. And after months of paperwork, I signed the deed with a grin that wouldn't quit. I owned every inch of this place, free and clear. Or so I thought. The trouble started subtly, like a storm brewing on the horizon. The complex sat on a commercial lot, separate from the upscale residential neighborhood nearby. That neighborhood, with its manicured lawns and cookie-cutter McMansions, was ruled by an HOA infamous for its iron fist. Locals swapped horror stories about them, fines for planting the wrong flowers, bans on basketball hoops, even a guy who got a $500 penalty for parking his truck too visibly. I'd chuckle at these tales, thinking glad that's not my problem. My property was zoned commercial with no legal ties to their HOA. I figured they'd leave me alone. Big mistake. The first hint of trouble came a week after I moved. I found a letter taped to my lobby door, written in that passive-aggressive font only HOAs seem to master. It demanded I submit my building's exterior paint colors, window treatments, and even my landscaping plans for their approval. Laughed out loud. My building's sleek gray facade and tinted glass were already city approved. Why would I need Karen's blessing? I crumpled the letter and tossed it, assuming it was a mix-up. But Karen wasn't playing. She started showing up unannounced, peering into my windows, scribbling notes on her clipboard. Once, I caught her measuring my parking lot lines with a tape measure, muttering about non-compliant spacing. I waved politely, hoping she'd take the hint. Didn't by week 3, her visits became a daily ritual. My employees started calling her clipboard Karen, half joking, half nervous. She'd leave notes on my tenants' cars, warning them about unauthorized parking despite our private lot. One morning, she cornered my receptionist, demanding to see our HOA compliance records. I stepped in, calmly explaining that we weren't part of her neighborhood. Karen's eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that," she hissed, storming off. I should have known then that this was more than petty bureaucracy. Karen was on a mission, and I was her target. The final straw came the day before the 911 call. I got an email from the HOA, addressed to all property owners, claiming my tenants owed $1,200 in annual HOA dues. It cited vague community standards and threatened legal action if we didn't pay by week's end. My tenants, small businesses like a graphic design studio and a yoga instructor renting office space, panicked. One even considered breaking their lease. I was livid. I called Karen, keeping my tone professional, and laid out the facts. My property was a commercial lot fully owned, with no HOA jurisdiction. Her response chilled me. "You're new here, Jake. You don't know how things work. Pay up or we'll take control." I hung up, stunned. Take control of my building? I spent that night combing through my property records, confirming what I knew. The deed was ironclad, the zoning clear. I owned this complex, and no HOA could touch it. I scheduled a meeting with Karen to shut this down for good. But she had other plans. That brings us back to that surreal morning, standing in my lobby, staring at Karen's smug grin as sirens wailed outside. She'd escalated from letters to a full-blown power grab, calling the cops to enforce her delusional claim. My mind raced. How far would she go? And how had I underestimated her this badly? One thing was clear. I wasn't backing down. The first sign of trouble came a week after I moved in, like a dark cloud creeping over my sunny new venture. A letter was taped to my lobby door, written in that condescending tone only HOAs seemed too perfect. Demanded I submit my buildings. Exterior paint colors, window treatments, and even my landscaping plans for their approval. I laughed it off. My sleek gray facade and tinted glass were city approved. And my lot was commercial, not part of their neighborhood. I tossed the letter in the trash and got back to work. But Karen, the HOA president, wasn't one to be ignored. She was a force of nature, and not the good kind. Karen started showing up unannounced, her clipboard a constant companion. I'd spot her outside, squinting at my building like it personally offended her, scribbling notes with a scowl. One day, I caught her measuring my parking lot lines with a tape measure, muttering about non-compliant spacing. I waved politely, hoping she'd back off. She didn't. Instead, she left sticky notes on my tenants' cars, warning them about unauthorized parking in our private lot. My tenants' small businesses like a graphic design studio, a yoga instructor, and a startup bakery started, whispering nervously. "Jake, what's going on?" asked Lisa, the yoga instructor, clutching one of Karen's notes. I reassured her it was nothing, but I was starting to feel the heat. Things escalated fast. 2 weeks in, Karen sent an email to all my tenants, claiming they owed $1,200 in annual HOA dues for community upkeep. The email cited vague bylaws and threatened legal action if they didn't pay by the end of the month. My tenants were spooked. Mike, who ran the cafe, showed me the email, his face pale. "Can't afford this, Jake," he said. "This legit?" I told him no way my property was exempt from their HOA, but the damage was done. Some tenants talked about breaking their leases, worried about legal trouble. I was furious. This wasn't just Karen being nosy. It was a calculated attack on my business. I called Karen, keeping my tone professional, despite wanting to scream. "My property isn't under your HOA," I said, citing my deed and zoning records. "You're overstepping." Her response was, "I see. You're new here, Jake. You don't know how things work. Comply, or we'll take control." I hung up, stunned. Take control? Of my building? I spent that night digging through property records, confirming what I knew my deed was. Airtight, my lot zoned commercial with no HOA jurisdiction. I emailed the HOA board, attaching my documents and demanding they rein Karen in. Their reply? A vague, "We'll review your concerns." Useless. Determined to get answers, I talked to a neighbor from the residential area, Tom, who owned a nearby house. Over coffee, he spilled the tea on Karen's reign of terror. The HOA was losing clout. Residents were fed up with her endless rules and fines. Karen, desperate to stay in power, had started targeting nearby properties to expand her empire. My high-profile complex, with its shiny new businesses, was her golden ticket to prove she was still in charge. "She's been bragging about annexing your lot," Tom said. "She thinks you'll cave because you're young." I clenched my fists. Karen wasn't just misguided. She was on a power trip, and I was her target. Her next move was bold. She posted flyers around my building, bright yellow and impossible to miss, declaring that tenants faced eviction for non-compliance with HOA rules. One flyer even claimed my cafe's outdoor tables violated community aesthetics. Mike was livid, showing me a flyer that threatened to shut him down. "I've got a family to feed, Jake," he said. I promised to fix it, but inside I was boiling. Karen wasn't just harassing me, she was scaring my tenants, threatening their livelihoods. I scheduled a meeting with her to shut this down, but she kept dodging me, leaving voicemails about urgent compliance issues. I started documenting everything: her notes, flyers, emails, knowing I'd need evidence if this got ugly. Spoiler: it did. The night before the 911 call, I found a new letter taped to my door, this time claiming the HOA had annexed my property due to zoning violations. It was nonsense, but the audacity floored me. Karen was banking on intimidation, hoping I'd fold under pressure. Instead, I doubled down, calling my lawyer Sarah to prepare for a fight. I had no idea Karen was about to take things to a whole new level. That Tuesday morning, I walked into my lobby and froze. Karen stood there, clipboard in hand, with two security guards who looked like they'd been hired off a tough guy casting call. Her sign, HOA property, all rules apply, was taped crookedly to the glass wall, mocking me. "You're trespassing," she declared, her voice dripping with smugness. "This building is under HOA management now." Before I could process her audacity, red and blue lights flashed through the windows. Karen had called 911, claiming I was illegally on her property. My heart pounded like a drum. This wasn't just a power play. It was a full-blown ambush, and I was staring down a surreal nightmare in my own building. Two officers stepped inside, their boots echoing on the marble floor. The lead officer, Daniels, a grizzled guy with a no-nonsense vibe, scanned the room. His partner, Officer Lopez, hung back, hand on her radio, eyeing the security guards warily. Karen launched into her spiel. Waving a stack of papers, she claimed proof the HOA had annexed my complex due to zoning violations. Her voice was shrill, her gestures theatrical, like she'd rehearsed this moment in front of a mirror. "He's been ignoring our bylaws for months," she insisted, pointing at me like I was a criminal, or protecting the community. The guards nodded stiffly, but I could tell they were just following orders, probably regretting signing. Up for this circus, I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "Officers, I own this building," I said, pulling out my phone to show my digital copies of the deed, title, and zoning records, solo notarized, time-stamped, and legit. I handed it to Daniels, who skimmed the documents, his brow furrowing. "This looks official," he muttered, glancing at Karen. She doubled down, thrusting her papers at him. "These are the real records," she snapped. "His lot was reclassified under our HOA last year." Her voice cracked slightly, betraying her nerves, but she kept up the act. Clutching her clipboard like a lifeline, my tenants, drawn by the commotion, peeked out of their offices. Lisa, the yoga instructor, whispered to Mike, the cafe owner, who was filming on his phone. A small crowd of employees and clients gathered near the glass doors, murmuring. The lobby felt like a stage, and I was the unwilling star of Karen's drama. I explained to the officers that my property was a commercial lot, fully owned, no ties to the HOA. Daniels nodded, but Karen interrupted, shouting about community standards and legal precedents. Lopez raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Ma'am, let's keep this civil," she said, her tone sharp. Daniels asked us to step outside while they reviewed the documents. I complied, but my mind was racing. How had Karen pulled this off? Calling 911 wasn't just bold, it was reckless. I noticed her guards shifting uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. They knew this was shaky ground. Outside, the summer heat hit me, and I saw more onlookers, tenants, delivery drivers, even a few neighbors watching the spectacle. Mike's video was still rolling, and I realized this could go viral, for better or worse. I called my lawyer, Sarah, a legal shark who'd handled my property purchase. "I'm on my way," she said. "Don't say anything else till I get there." Karen stood by her guards, fanning herself with her clipboard, trying to look authoritative. But her confidence was cracking. Her eyes darted to the officers, who were now comparing her papers to my deed on Daniel's phone. I overheard him say, "These lot numbers don't match." Karen's face paled, but she kept muttering about HOA jurisdiction. I felt a spark of hope, but also rage. This wasn't just about my building. It was my dream, my tenants, livelihoods, years of my life. Karen's stunt was threatening to derail it all. As we waited, I noticed a news van pulling up across the street. Someone had tipped off a local reporter, and a camera crew was setting up. Great, I thought. Now it's a full-blown media frenzy. My tenants whispered nervously, some worried about their businesses' reputations. Lisa approached me, her voice low. "Jake, are we going to be okay?" I nodded, projecting confidence I didn't fully feel. "I've got this," I told her, but inside I was praying Sarah would arrive soon. The officers asked Karen for more ID, and she fumbled, her bravado fading. I knew I was in the right, but this standoff was testing every ounce of my patience. As the summer heat pressed down outside my building, Sarah arrived like a legal tornado, her blazer crisp and her briefcase stuffed with evidence. She was my secret weapon A lawyer who'd handled my property purchase with surgical precision. "Jake, stay cool," she whispered, her eyes locked on Karen like a hawk spotting prey. The officers, Daniels and Lopez, were still comparing Karen's flimsy papers to my ironclad deed. Karen stood by her hired guards, fanning herself with her clipboard, but her smugness was crumbling. Her guards, looking increasingly awkward, shifted their weight, probably wishing they'd called in sick. My tenants clustered near the glass doors, whispering, some still filming. The news crew across the street was now rolling, their camera trained on the drama. This wasn't just a dispute anymore, it was a public reckoning. I was ready to expose Karen's scheme. Sarah strode up to Daniels, handing him a thick folder. "These are the official property records," she said, her voice calm but commanding. "My client owns this commercial lot outright, zoned independently of any HOA. Here's the deed, title, and a letter from the city confirming no HOA jurisdiction." Daniels flipped through the documents, his frown deepening as he cross-referenced Karen's papers. Lopez leaned over, pointing at something in Karen's stack. "These lot numbers are wrong," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Karen's face went white, but she tried to recover, stammering, "That's a clerical error. Our records show annexation last year." Sarah didn't flinch. "Your records are fabricated," she said, pulling out a highlighted page. "These signatures don't match city archives, and the dates are impossible." The crowd gasped, and I felt a surge of relief mixed with fury. Karen's papers were a house of cards, and Sarah was blowing it down. I stepped closer, catching Daniel's eye. "Officer, I've been dealing with her harassment for weeks," I said. "She's been threatening my tenants, posting fake notices, demanding money. This isn't a mix-up, it's deliberate." Daniels nodded, turning to Karen. "Ma'am, this looks like fraud. Filing a false police report is serious." Karen clutched her clipboard like a shield, her voice rising. "I'm protecting the community. He's the one breaking rules." But her words sounded hollow, and even her guards looked embarrassed, stepping back slightly. Sarah wasn't done. She handed Daniels a USB drive. "This contains emails and flyers Karen sent to my client's tenants, claiming they owed HOA dues and threatening eviction. They're time-stamped and traceable." Lopez took the drive, nodding. "We'll review this," she said. I glanced at my tenants, Lisa, Mike, and others, whose faces lit up with hope. They'd been terrified of losing their businesses, and now the truth was breaking through. Mike, still filming, gave me a thumbs up, his video capturing every second of Karen's unraveling. I pulled Sarah aside, my voice low. How did she think she'd get away with this? Sarah's eyes narrowed. "She's desperate," she said. "I did some digging last night. The HOA board's been on the verge of ousting her residents, are fed up with her overreach. She targeted your high-profile complex to score a win, hoping to intimidate you into compliance and prove her power." I clenched my fists. Karen wasn't just misguided, she'd forged documents, called cops, and risked my livelihood to save her ego. The stakes hit me hard. This wasn't just about my building. It was my dream, my tenants' futures, years of sacrifice. I'd poured my soul into this place. Karen thought she could bully me out of it. Daniel stepped over, his expression grim. "Mr. Jake, your documents check out? Your claims don't hold water." Turned to Karen. "Ma'am, we need to discuss this at the station. False reports and forged documents are criminal offenses." Karen's eyes widened, and she started babbling about misunderstandings and community standards. Lopez wasn't having it. "Save it for the report," she said, guiding Karen toward the patrol car. The guards, now leaderless, mumbled apologies and slipped away, clearly done with this mess. The crowd erupted in murmurs, and the news crew zoomed in, capturing Karen's walk of shame. My tenants cheered quietly, and Lisa hugged me, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Jake," she said. I nodded, but my mind was still reeling. Sarah clapped my shoulder. "We're not done," she said. "You should file a restraining order and report this to the HOA board." "She's toast," I agreed, feeling a mix of triumph and exhaustion. Karen's scheme had collapsed, but the damage weeks of stress, tenant panic, and now a media circus lingered. I glanced at the news van, knowing this story was about to explode. As Karen was led away by Officer Lopez, her clipboard abandoned on the lobby floor, a weight lifted off my shoulders. The summer sun blazed outside my complex on that June morning in 2025, but inside, my tenants erupted in quiet cheers. Lisa, the yoga instructor, hugged me, her eyes misty. "Jake, you saved us," she said. Mike, the cafe owner, still filming, grinned and said, "This is going viral, man." I managed a shaky smile, but my mind was spinning. Karen's power grab had been crushed, but the toll weeks of harassment, tenant panic, and a police standoff in my own building was heavy. This wasn't just a win, it was a hard-fought victory, and I was determined to make sure Karen's actions had consequences. Sarah pulled me aside, her voice steady. "You've got options, Jake. File a restraining order to keep her away from the property. Report her to the HOA board. They'll want to distance themselves from this mess. And consider a civil suit for harassment and defamation." Overwhelmed but resolute, I didn't want to drag this out, but Karen had crossed too many lines. That afternoon, I filed a restraining order, ensuring she couldn't set foot near my complex. Sarah drafted a formal complaint to the HOA board, attaching evidence of Karen's forged documents, threatening emails and flyers, included a personal letter detailing the stress she'd caused my tenants, small business owners who'd trusted me to protect their dreams. "This isn't just about me," I wrote. "It's about fairness." The HOA board acted faster than I expected. By Thursday, June 19th, 2025, they'd held an emergency meeting and ousted Karen as president. A board member called me apologizing profusely. She acted alone, he insisted. We had no idea she'd gone this far. I wasn't fully convinced their vague responses to my earlier email suggested. They'd turned a blind eye to her antics, but I accepted the apology. They promised to revise their bylaws to prevent future overreach, and I held them to it, asking Sarah to monitor their actions. My tenants, relieved, started calling it the Great Karen Takedown. The mood in the complex shifted from fear to triumph. Then came the viral explosion. Mike's video, capturing Karen's meltdown and the police shutting her down, hit X that evening. By Friday, it had thousands of likes and reposts, with comments like "HOA tyrants getting what they deserve" and "Jake's a hero." People shared their own HOA horror stories, fines for kids' chalk drawings, bans on holiday lights, turning the post into a rallying cry against overzealous HOAs. The local news, which had filmed the standoff, aired a segment on June 20th, 2025, framing it as "Local Entrepreneur Defeats HOA Power Grab." My phone buzzed non-stop with messages from friends, strangers, even a few lawyers offering to help pro bono if I sued. Inspired by the response, I decided to tell my story on my YouTube channel, and which I'd started as a side hustle to share tech tips and startup advice. On Saturday, June 21st, I spent hours editing footage, Mike's video, clips from the news, and my own narration into a 15-minute video titled "How I Stopped an HOA from Stealing My Building." I framed it as a lesson in standing up to bullies, emphasizing the importance of knowing your property rights. I included practical tips: check your deed, verify zoning laws, document harassment. My voice cracked as I described the fear in my tenants' eyes, making it personal. "This complex is more than a building," I said. "It's our dreams, our futures. Don't let anyone take that away." The video went live on June 22nd, 2025, and by evening, it had 10,000 views. By Monday, it hit 100,000, and my subscriber count skyrocketed from 500 to 5,000. Comments poured in. "Karen got karma. This happened to me too." Viewers shared stories of HOA battles, from fines for unapproved fences to threats over pet breeds. Some offered to crowdfund a lawsuit against Karen, but I declined. I wanted closure, not revenge. The videos. Success drew offers from podcasters, and even a producer pitching a short documentary called HOA Wars. Wow. I was floored. What started as a nightmare had become a platform to inspire others. My tenants, grateful and energized, threw a victory party in the lobby that weekend. Mike brewed free cold brew. Lisa led a yoga session, and the graphic design team made a banner. Karen Free Zone. We laughed, swapped stories, and toasted to resilience. The complex felt alive again, a hub of creativity and community. I looked around, my chest tight with pride. These people, my tenants, had trusted me, and I'd fought for them. It wasn't just about winning. It was about protecting what we'd built together. Karen, meanwhile, went silent. Rumor was she'd left the neighborhood humiliated. I didn't care where she went, as long as she stayed away. The HOA sent a new president to meet me, promising transparency. I stayed cautious, but hopeful. My complex was thriving, with new tenants inquiring thanks to the publicity. I even started a Know Your Rights workshop for local business owners, sharing lessons from my ordeal. To my YouTube viewers, I say this. If you're facing an HOA nightmare, don't back down. Check your records, get legal help, and stand your ground. You're not alone. Smash that like button, subscribe, and drop your own crazy stories in the comments. Let's expose these power trips and build a community that fights back. Who knows? Your story might be the next one I tell.